Okay, thank you to everybody to be there for this WUSME side event. For the first time for the COP here in Egypt, we have Madam President Barbara Terenzi, our President of WUSME, who want to deliver a message to open this side event. Please, Madam Terenzi, can take the floor.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to everyone at COP27. On behalf of myself and of WUSME, the World Union of Small and Medium Enterprises, I would like to thank the UNFCCC for the opportunity given to hold a side event. Also, thanks to collaboration of our partners' organization. ASSOCHAM, the Associated Chambers of Commerce and Industry of India, ACCARD, African Center for Climate Action and Rural Development Initiative, Initiative of Change International, ETFI, European Development Financial Institution. WUSME Association is an international organization founded in the Republic of San Marino with representatives in more than 100 countries. WUSME is engaged in supporting SMEs and craft with particular attention to developing countries, young SMEs and women SMEs. WUSME Association act as link between institutions and SMEs and craft to support them in the different phases of their ecological transition. For SMEs and craft, we owe even more because the work is huge and everyone's effort will be very useful. Thank you. I give the floor to Mrs. Fossaert.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam President. Of course, our side event is very important, I would say, for us, and of course also for SMEs, and for all politicians who are not here. I mean by that SME in the world, it's roughly 300 million of company. So it's really important. And I would say also that, for example, we have ASSOCHAM with us, with Mr. Pinaki. For example, in India, it's 3 million SMEs, and with the total of micro company, it's 7 million. So those figures, I think it's important to introduce our side event. Complementary information, it's about employment. For example, employment, roughly, we are saying that half of the population in the world is working through SMEs. And also, roughly, we are saying that 40% of income, GP income, it's through SMEs. And I would say that the importance of our side events is to look what those SMEs are taking as initiative, and also what kind of solution they are finding for the finance, and also through organizations like WUSME, what we can help to bring more solution and innovative solution for financing those initiatives. So to start our side event, may I introduce the different panelists. And the first one I would like to call by Visio, it's Mr. Soren Andreasen. So, Mr. Andreasen, can you make a little presentation, no more than 1 minute, concerning yourself?
Yes, hello, Michel. Thank you for including me in your event today. I hope you hear me clearly. That's great to hear. So I represent the association of 15 European development finance institutions. If you hear me talking about DFIs today, this is development finance institutions, and we are set up to promote private sector development in emerging markets and developing economies. We do that by providing financing and advice for local financial institutions, as well as directly in growing enterprises that contribute to creating jobs and other contribute towards other sustainable development goals. We have high commitments to climate action and to a just and inclusive transition, and that's exactly what we'll be talking about today. So I hope to be able to share examples of how inclusive finance can help in the transition and adaptation to climate change. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Soren. Now I'm asking to Mr. Pinaki to make a little presentation of himself during no more than 1 minute.
Thank you, Michel. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm very delighted to be here. I am Pinaki Disgupta. I'm from the Councils of Environment, Water and Climate Change, Education and Skill, and GEM Green Building Certification Program for India. We look into the aspects of how we can connect industries and SMEs with circular economy concepts and sustainability concepts. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Akansha, Saklani, if he's there. Mrs. And before that, Mr. Manish Sonkar is with us, also.
Hi everyone, I'm Akansha. I'm from World Resources Institute. We work on decarbonization of MSME sectors and hard-to-abate industries. And thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks a lot. Je donne la parole maintenant à Bernadette, qui vient du Burkina Faso.
Je suis Bernadette Ouedraogo, je suis agroéconomiste et actuellement je suis secrétaire permanente de l'association des grossistes et d'intrants agricoles. Donc nous sommes dans les engrais chimiques et organiques. Et également je suis présidente de la table de concertation pour le développement de l'entrepreneuriat féminin au Burkina Faso. Merci.
Thanks a lot, Bernadette. And we have also from India, if you can take the floor. Yeah.
I'm Manish Sonkar. I'm the co-founder of Neo Energy. We have been working with startups and companies all across and building out the sustainability plan. And we look at grassroots innovations around it. So from sustainable fashion to smart energy storages, decentralized systems across.
Thank you so much. Now, Mrs. Irina Fedorenko.
Hello everyone, my name is Irina and I represent the steering group of the Initiatives of Land, Lives and Peace. It's a program of Initiatives of Change International, and we work in multiple sectors on the nexus of land and security, as well as entrepreneurship, climate technology and environmental education. And I have a video message from our partner, Dr. Anunaya Chobei, the Provost of Anand National University of India, to announce the launch of the first climate change education program in India.
Thanks a lot. We have also
the video.
Yeah. So just one moment for the video. It's coming.
stop volume here in this? So I don't know. Stop volume.
We have the picture, but not the sound. So,
I don't know, the volume is stopped here, but I don't know.
Just a second.
so we can ask to Mr. Rangu if he can come, and we try to find a solution for the video. Mr. Rangu?
It's just,
Yeah, myself Raghunath here, CEO of CEO of KIS Group. We are into decarbonizing a lot of industries. We are decarbonizing Unilever. We are decarbonizing so many sectors in Southeast Asia. So I'll share that details more later in the decarbonizing of sectors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have also in Visio a nice person who is taking the floor now. Is Soren.
Delegates and friends, I'm Anunet Chaube, and I lead an international university which offers India's first undergraduate program in climate change. It is beyond any debate, beyond any doubt now that our climate is changing, and it's changing fast. And it is fast impacting the way we live and the world that we live in. There are more droughts, more floods, more fires, extreme weather events that are catastrophic and devastating. We had learned about these consequences of our irresponsible and unsustainable approach to development. We had made promises to change our ways and had set goals at international conclaves and summits. But progress has been minimal. Our targets seem to be untenable at this point in time. The next decade is going to be the most crucial phase in our history to fight the climate challenge and to try to limit the threat and its impact to the greatest extent possible. I hope COP27 will lead to a firmer resolve and ensure better, more impactful execution of goals that help weaker economies acquire the means to protect themselves.
Okay, thank you, and sorry for Dr. Sherin McCarthy. Now you can take the floor, please. But we can hear you. Yes, put the sound.
So, my name is Shireen McCarthy, and I'm the director at HOUEDJI International, which is a global social policy program at the National Centre for Social Research in London. We work on a vast array of social policy issues, and climate change is one of our areas of engagement. We are very keen on supporting and strengthening data infrastructure and climate variability and climate action in low and middle income countries. And I think my remarks today are going to be focused on the MENA region. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We can ask also to Edfi a little word about her presentation.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Eftimia Salo, and I'm the head of carbon
Louder.
projects at Compensate. Yep. So Compensate is a Finnish-based startup, and we are working in the voluntary carbon market, providing companies and individuals access to high-quality carbon projects.
Thank you. And Mr. Dr. Lauren Fletcher.
Hello, Dr. Lauren Fletcher. I am the founder of Beta Earth Venture Studio. I am a former NASA engineer turned to developing new environmental restoration technologies, but not just the technology. I focus also on innovative business models that empower local communities to access the technology and increase both restoration results, but also social uplift at the same time.
Thank you, Lauren. Now, just a word from Freeman, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Freeman Elohor. I work for the African Center for Climate Action Rural Development Initiative. What we do basically is to bridge the gap between national government and local people. So what we do is to help local people participate in nature-based solution, drive the net zero, and also to have their voices heard across board. So we are just like happy community people, take actions, train youth and train community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. In the same perspective, we have Innocent OLUOWO. If you can take the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm Innocent Antoine OLUOWO. I'm from Benin. So I'm the Executive Director of Youth Initiative for Land in Africa. So Youth Initiative for Land in Africa is member of International Land Coalition. So our mission is how to promote and advocate youth, land, right, and women in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Innocent. And also a word from Jen.
Yeah, thank you so much and greeting to everyone. My name is Jen and I come from Kenya, working for the International Land Coalition based in Africa. And International Land Coalition, it's a network bringing diverse international organizations across the continents. And we have over 300 members across 84 countries. And in Africa, we are present in 28 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, bringing 95 members. And of course, our work revolves around advancing the issues of land rights for communities who depend on and from the land. We work on locally led ecosystems restorations, indigenous people territorial rights, and also not leaving behind women and youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. So we can start. COP27 is the COP for Africa. But not only, we have here a speaker from India, and they have many things to say about little industry and craft activities. First, we can start with climate risk, especially for agriculture. It's so important for African people. So, Sherin, you are from this region, and the question is the following. We want to know, can you tell us about climate risk in the Middle East region, and what this has consequences for agricultural SMEs and other activity? Take the floor, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, brilliant. So I think the first thing to say is that it's important to understand that this region, the Middle East and North Africa, is extremely vulnerable to the impact of climate change, but that this impact is also compounded and exacerbated by other risks, socioeconomic, political conditions that have had that have resulted in quite complex impact of climate change in this part of the world. Now, if I was to identify the key challenges or the key risks, the first one is, of course, food insecurity. And there are a number of meetings that had taken place last week at the COP on the challenges of food insecurity as a result of rising temperatures, more variable rainfall, and all of that is likely and is likely to also continue to contribute to harvest failures and production shortfalls. Now, in Egypt, for example, climate change has contributed to the erosion of the Nile's shoreline. And this has also resulted in a reduction of water levels. Now, that's had implications on food security for Egypt, but also for other countries and neighboring countries that rely very heavily on the Nile water. There's a report that was written in 2019 that has actually warned that extreme heat and increased desertification in the Middle East could actually lead to massive displacements by 2050. And so it's important to situate the impact of climate change within the broader geopolitical and socioeconomic conditions within the region and vulnerabilities within the region. The other concern is also water insecurity, and I've already mentioned that, but if you look, for example, at the conflict in Yemen, it is largely the result of water insecurities, the impact of water insecurity feeding the political conflict, and the political conflict, on the other hand, feeding the mismanagement and the fight over water, scarce water resources. So it's really important to also connect water insecurity to food insecurity and border dynamics. And of course, if you'd been walking around the pavilions last week, there have been a number of discussions around rising sea levels and increasing sea temperatures, and how areas like Alexandria and Egypt, for example, are quite vulnerable to that, and that there are broader socio-economic concerns around what can be done in terms of climate adaptation strategies. So overall, I think there's a need for a more holistic approach that embeds that climate agenda and the discussions that are actively taking place within the COP, within broader humanitarian development efforts that are taking place. Now, if I was to look at the impact on SMEs and agricultural SMEs, I mean, SMEs in the region are directly impacted by the effects of climate change. When a disaster hits, they are the first responders. When there's that the negative impact of slow onset, they are directly affected, and they are crucial engines for the economic and social reconstruction of those countries. Their primary market is the local market. Unlike bigger businesses and companies, they do not have the capacity of leaving the country and moving somewhere else where their businesses could thrive. And so it's really, really important to think of SMEs as very much embedded within that context and directly affected by climate change. And so it's really important to bring them to critical discussions on tackling the effects of climate change. It's very important to build their capacities in terms of accessing climate finance, and I'm really glad to see that as part of the discussion today. But also raising their awareness on how to integrate sustainability in their work. A lot of studies have been conducted on that, and they point to the fact that there is a need for strengthening and building capacity, but also listening to them in terms of what they need and how they need it. There's also a need to invest in early warning systems to enable them to be to adapt to the conditions, but also to be actively engaged in addressing the adverse and negative effects of climate change in the region.
Thank you, Sherin.
I'm looking forward to questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, we see that this question of lands is very important, and we will discuss about that during all this side event. I would like to give the floor to Bernadette concerning Burkina Faso about this question of land. Bernadette, est-ce que vous pouvez prendre la parole et nous dire comment sont traitées les questions de terre au Burkina?
Ok, merci. Comme vous le savez, l'accès surtout à la terre est une question culturelle. Donc au niveau du Burkina Faso, et bien qu'il y ait des politiques, l'accès surtout des femmes est un peu compliqué. Donc je parlerai plus des femmes vulnérables dont c'est un facteur de production dans le secteur agricole. Donc, elles se regroupent en association pour pouvoir bénéficier de la terre pour leurs activités. Mais pour cela, lorsqu'elles se regroupent, elles acquièrent la terre, mais les autorités sont là pour les accompagner pour avoir la documentation. Une chose est d'avoir la terre, une chose est de la sécuriser pour des financements. Donc, pour les investissements. Donc, ça, c'est le premier niveau pour les femmes. Et l'autre aspect également, ces femmes, généralement, vont demander les terres dégradées, les terres dont personne n'a besoin parce qu'elles savent qu'elles n'ont pas accès à des terres fertiles. Et à partir de cela, les terres non fertiles, elles essaient d'utiliser les techniques pour fertiliser, pour restaurer la terre. Et à ce niveau maintenant, elles se font accompagner par des organisations et par les autorités pour acquérir la documentation à l'effet de les sécuriser. Donc, pour ces femmes vulnérables, c'est ces deux aspects qui se font actuellement. Et toute la réglementation pour essayer de protéger ces acquis. Par contre, celles qui ont plus de besoins peuvent acheter la terre parce qu'il y a des dispositions légales qui permettent cela. Donc, merci.
Thank you. Well, a quick translation concerning what Bernadette was saying. Few things. The main point is that it's a difficulty for women to have access to lands, and they are obliged to work. Those vulnerable women, they act together, and they must also to be accompanied, so that they can reach a final point. It's to have the title of a land, because if they have the title of a land, they can obtain credit. You know, no title, no credit. And those women are very courageous, because sometimes they are taking degraded land because nobody else wants to take those lands. And of course, the technology that they know now very well, how it's possible to bring recovering for those lands. It's an opportunity, in fact, for all those women to reach the final point. They have a land. Okay, thank you. So after Bernadette, I think that we can ask to Soren. Can you give some example and institution helping SMEs to adapt their infrastructure? Please, Soren.
Yes, thank you very much. So with the view from financial institutions and with the focus on the agricultural sector, which is a critical source of livelihoods for large low-income populations, the vulnerability to the changing climate and also extreme weather events is very evident. And many of these enterprises are operating close to the line of subsistence, which means that when they are facing a shock, whether a weather event or a gradual change in the climate that affects the productivity of their agricultural activities, it can really have devastating effects on their incomes and on their potential to provide for the livelihoods of the households involved. And what we seek to achieve as financial institutions is to bring finance, but also other elements that are crucial to increasing the productivity of these enterprises, so that they can operate at higher levels of income or yields, and benefit also in other parts of the supply chains, in processing and transport and so on. So because it basically increases not only income but also resilience to shocks, which is very crucial. We do that as financial institutions or as DFIs by working with local financial intermediaries that are experts in serving agricultural enterprises and overcome the difficulties in financing small or micro enterprises that often are struggling exactly with these issues of land title and collateral and so on that are often requirements from you could say the regular banks or financial institutions. So there needs to be specialization to serve these enterprises, but also to work with them to bring technology, to bring new methods, to bring enterprise development, to allow individual enterprises, but also networks of enterprises to develop so that they have higher productivity and reduce costs also of reaching their customers and ultimately higher incomes for themselves. This can be achieved through interventions aimed at private sector development. It's often not enough alone. There often needs to be combined with policy interventions and partnerships with communities in the different locations. But we do see that there are innovative ways of achieving this. And there are companies that are offering services either to bring infrastructures, irrigation technologies, and so on that are impossible to access for the individual farmer, but can be achieved if it's organized in the location in a good way. And I think we'll talk more about energy as well. We believe that electricity supply to close the electricity access gap is also often crucial for increasing the productivity of enterprises. And I hope we can talk more about that. But we do believe that the private sector financing can play an important role.
Okay. Thank you, Soren. I want to come back on this subject about land with Freeman and Irina. First question is for Freeman. How can we address the cascading effect of climate-induced poverty and implication for food security and access in Africa? Please take the floor.
Thank you very much. I think if we talk about climate change and where the worst effect is being felt across the globe, you should be pointing hands at Africa. Reason because there are a lot of challenges with infrastructure and also capacity being built. Now, we expected that COP27, for example, ought to be an implementation COP whereby every country is actually grasping like loss and damages. And loss of damages is actually looking at addressing where some of this effect of climate change is being felt. Last year in Glasgow, issues were like he was addressing through the Zoom discussion. They talked about technology transfer. They talked about financing net zero. But we're here talking about loss and damages. So it shows that Africa and other developing countries are faced with a lot of changes. Right now, as I speak to you, there are countries in Nigeria that are fully submerged, communities in Nigeria are fully submerged in water. Now, they are farmers, they are fishermen, and their livelihood depend on this resource. And once flooding takes these resources off them, you understand the issue of poverty in real time. You need no further explanation to tell you that their livelihood is taken away from them. And also, if you also look at it, implication for food security, if I don't have food to eat, you need me to either move to safer heavens. So migration will be on the increase. So we're talking about financial access, which is why for us as an organization, we're advocating that loss and damage, it is not all about collecting this climate finance. We are also advocating for an opportunity where this money get to the places where the impact is really felt, which is at the local level. So that is why we are saying access. And the government of each country shouldn't be looking at international interventions alone. It's for them to develop social infrastructure like social services, energy infrastructure, or maybe drainage system in order for them to gradually address so that they can mitigate some of these cascading effects that is leading to serious poverty and also migration and hunger that is running across Africa while we are in COP27 talking about loss and damages. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Irina, can you say a word about your action in that field?
Thank you. Yes, I think from our side where we stand as the representatives of civil society and also of SME business and entrepreneurs, what we are seeing is that the nexus of degradation, climate change and security is becoming more and more important for the global community, for the local people on the ground. And if several years ago the links were not that obvious, that we actually needed to go and advocate, and with the initiatives of change we ran one of the first core dialogue on environment and security, and that was at the time over 10 years ago where people wouldn't even make that link, and we had to go and advocate, and we published a book, and we've been very vocal with the key stakeholders in our field, the IUCN, UNCCD, and even NATO, up until the point we actually got the SDG on land adopted by the UN National General Assembly, as well as we now have all the major security players in the field recognizing climate change as a security threat. And when climate change becomes a security threat and security issue, then hopefully, that's the hope, right, that it gets the same level of attention and the same level of priority and funding as the security and military budgets. That's not the case, and that's not what is currently even possible, but we do see the discourse change, and even in this latest conflict, we see that there are conversations about food. There are conversations about disasters that exacerbate also loss of crops, and that can lead to conflicts, as well as the conflict can lead to food insecurity. So this nexus is not just very important for the global community, for politicians and the big international organizations. This is very important for the local actors, for civil society, and for entrepreneurs. So to give you some hope, we see a lot more action on the ground while we have the discussions at COP about loss and damage, and while we have these big negotiations going in Zone D. In all other zones, we have private sector stepping in, we have civil society stepping up, and we have entrepreneurs who work on solving the issues at home to prevent land degradation, to build peace, to use religion, to use common language or different languages to come together to restore land and to bring peace, to prevent further degradation, to prevent food insecurity, and to prevent migration, to prosper at home without waiting for the international community to agree on something and come up with funding. So I think that's where the role of entrepreneurs, of civil society, of activists on the ground is especially crucial. And all across Africa and Asia and India, we see a lot of amazing initiatives addressing that.
Thank you, Irina. So to summarize this part, I would say that we are speaking about land, we are speaking about conflict, we are speaking about job. I would say that concerning SMEs, there is a part of the solution, and I would say a part of the solution in agriculture and also transformation agricultural product, because I think that solutions are by the eye and by the law. By the eye, we see that we need infrastructure, and our friend Freeman was speaking a lot about that, and I'm sure that we can develop in the following years all those big infrastructure. But also we need to create job in agriculture and also transformation of agricultural product. And for that we need money, and I think that would be a battle for WUSME to bring this money to those people so that they can have a job, they can create an activity, and they can stay in their land. Okay? Now I would like to speak the second part of our side event. It's about infrastructure. It's so important. Climate change obliges companies to transform their infrastructure. Reasons are numerous. Too much sun, too much water, too much wind, and so on. So I would like to call Mr. Raghunath because he can say from India if SME are adapting to this climate change in the industrial fields and craft activities. Mr. Raghunath, can you tell us about that? What you are doing in India? Okay, we have just a little problem with the microphone. Take this one.
Okay, once again, thank you so much for inviting me here. Some IT issues. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here to speak about actions we already taking in some countries in Southeast Asia. Can I have the slide, please? It's not coming. The slides are not coming. Okay, so we are on the screen now. As you can see on the screen, we are doing wonderful projects in Southeast Asia in infrastructure field. Go to next slide. We've been 17 years doing this one. Next. And next, please. As you can see here, we are capturing more than 1 million meter cube of biogas per day, and we are producing more than 2.9 million carbon credits per year. One of the Asia's largest in terms of biomethane capture. Next. This is the nature-based wonderful project we are doing in Indonesia. Unilever, the global giant, has decided to go net zero. We are decarbonizing 3 sectors here. We are decarbonizing agriculture sector, as you can see in the first picture, and we are decarbonizing the transportation sector. We transport the biomethane in bio-CNG vehicles, and we decarbonize the factory. That's Unilever factory. So with one project, we are achieving 3 sectors to go for net zero. One is agriculture industry, transportation industry, and the main industry. So here, the good thing is you have a great concentration and maximum impact. You have 3.7 tons of carbon dioxide reduced. It helps in infrastructure building, the green fuel sector. Next. Yeah, here we are doing 2 unique projects, which again helps in rural development, rural economy. We are doing a project in Malaysia, wherein 2 entire villages will be supplied with biomethane from the waste. So in these 2 villages in Malaysia, will be the first 2 villages in the world. It's a very good model to be replicated in Africa and other developing countries also, as you can see here. So LPG replaced, good employment generation. And third project similar here in India, wherein 1,800 homes will be getting biomethane from the waste produced in the homes. So here the infrastructure for biofuel, biomethane is getting very high. So as you can see here, the fossil fuel is replaced in animal industry as well as in the home industry also, in the homes of LPG. Next. And we are doing similar projects in Asia, wherein we are producing cow dung to power in Indian Prime Minister Modi's constituency. And the Asia's first project, wherein we are dispensing the biomethane. So these are the infrastructure projects which can be copied in every sector of Africa.
Okay, I see that is very interesting, but I would like to know your activity towards SMEs or population working SME. Can you tell us exactly how it is useful, please?
Yeah, these projects to help SMEs in fostering. It helps employment generation. It helps in getting more SMEs into the more business, because all the components are made of SMEs only. So this will help SMEs while we go for net zero. It helps all the SMEs. All the components made here are made by SMEs. So it's a good boost. You have a climate change tackling. You give a good opportunity for SMEs and employment generation.
Okay, thank you so much. I say that this technique can bring so much for SMEs. And now I would like that Mr. Pinaki can take the floor about a very important question also concerning SME. It's about decarbonization. Mr. Pinaki, what are the possible pathways for decarbonization of infrastructure and SMEs? Please take the floor.
Great. I'm audible now, I suppose. Wonderful. Thank you. So I will be very quick, and let me know if I'm on time. So I will be talking a little bit about our program which we run in ASSOCHAM, which is called the GEM Green Building Certification Program, and how does we connect that with the SME sector but also the local economy. And built infrastructure is not just about only energy, but it is also about the water, the resource conservation, and also the wastewater recycling, and it is all about enhancing the quality of living standards. And all the building sector and built infrastructure in India are all connected with SMEs because they are the one who supply the building materials, whether it is brick, whether it is, of course, building materials. Of course, there are large industries like steel, which are involved, steel and cement, but most of the labor, most of the kind of construction, real construction is done by the SMEs and the local workers. So what is about decarbonization of built infrastructure, and this is exactly what the COP27 follows, is basically to reduce emission and to scale up adaptation efforts, which we need more support from international organization, enhance flow of appropriate finance and just transition. So we do it with all our partners, whether they are consultants, they are architects, they are designers, they are MEP planners. So, and we are very serious about this. So what we have got is to integrate the GEM Green Building Certification to the Energy Conservation Code in India, which is based on, again, 29 principles. And we have another principle which is very recently added on sustainable design. So what we also cover in the kind of GEM certification is not just the energy part, but the water, waste, the people, and also the planet. So I'm just skip this. So we have many GEM Green Building Certification program, which are also applicable to SMEs in the longer term, not just to build infrastructure. So we have ratings for green interiors, hospitals, hotels, educational institutes, universities. Now we have started a new program for greening the railway stations. So we are working with around 24 of railway stations in India to get them green certified or sustainability certification. In all this, so in last slide, in all these years, we have been very lucky to have more than 100 universities as partners. These are the GEM level, and thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pinaki. I think that we can ask also to Bernadette a few words about adaptation for infrastructure in Burkina Faso. Adaptation des infrastructures au Burkina.
Ok, merci. Merci. Concernant les adaptations au niveau des infrastructures, je peux dire qu'au Burkina, elle se fait à 3 niveaux. Le premier niveau, c'est au niveau de la production. Le deuxième niveau, au niveau de la conservation. Et le troisième niveau, au niveau de la transformation et la distribution. Donc, au niveau le premier niveau, et les infrastructures, c'est surtout au niveau des petites ou bien de la production agricole, où de plus en plus, il y a des retenues d'eau ou les forages et la mise en place ou la vulgarisation et des systèmes d'irrigation adaptés. On appelle l'irrigation villageoise pour permettre aux producteurs de travailler toute l'année. Parce qu'au Burkina, nous avons une saison et la saison est généralement de 3 mois. Et après, bon, il faut rester oisif. Mais avec l'adaptation et tous les moyens qui sont mis pour faciliter l'accès à ces infrastructures, je parle plus au niveau des petites organisations. Le gouvernement a sa stratégie pour la construction des barrages, des systèmes de retenue d'eau, mais au niveau des producteurs, au niveau des communes, les groupements des producteurs s'organisent pour retenue ou forêt. au niveau de la conservation, parce que les produits agricoles sont des produits hautement périssables. Et également, la question de la conservation se pose. Donc, on utilise la technologie pour mieux conserver ces produits et également avoir des infrastructures de conservation adaptées aux producteurs. Également, au niveau de la transformation et la distribution, on constate de plus en plus l'utilisation de la technologie à ce niveau. On a par exemple tout ce qui est plus simple à utiliser et accessible également surtout aux femmes productrices qui sont également des transformatrices à ce niveau, et également des dispositifs pour permettre le conditionnement et à l'effet d'avoir un meilleur prix, parce que de plus en plus les produits sont vendus dans la sous-région ou à l'extérieur. Donc voilà ce que je peux dire concernant les infrastructures au niveau du Burkina Faso.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette. A quick summarize about what you said. I would say 3 points. One point, it's about production. You were talking about operation concerning water retention, and that we have drilling through the country so that we can improve irrigation for lands and to produce in all season. The second point, it was about conservation, because we have this problem with perishable product, and we must be able to store the product. And you say that the situation is improving, and that we have more and more producer. They have access to keep product cool, and so that they can improve their income. And also the last point, it's about distribution. Of course, they are looking for extension for the use of a new channel for the distribution. And also, you were saying that it's very important to establish activity with a processing unit so that we can transform the product. And final point, it was to improve also packaging. It's an important problem also in Burkina to have a good packaging. Now I would like to give the floor to Soren. Soren, are you with us? And I would like to see if it is possible to have connection with Soren in Brussels. So Soren, about all those questions concerning infrastructure, what are possible answers from your organization? Thank you.
Thank you. And you still hear me, Michel? Excellent. Well, I would like to build also directly on what Bernadette is explaining, because I do believe that investment in private sector enterprises, both at the level of the individual agricultural firm or farm, but also in companies that provide services to communities of farmers to help them increase their productivity and to reach markets, can be very powerful. And storage is exactly one area where I believe that there is significant potential for this. It is really devastating for farmers that often up to 50% of their crop is lost due to lack of effective storage facilities or cooling facilities and so on. And we see important enterprise models that can be invested in by DFIs and by local investors that can really help address this. Just last week, we saw European DFI announce an investment in large-scale grain storage facilities in India, but we also have development finance institutions helping invest on the African continents in cooling facilities, storing facilities, and related transport solutions. And I believe that's a really crucial aspect. This is often above the level of the individual farm, as I said, but it's very complementary. We also, at the level of the individual farms, we see very important business models for enterprises to service farms, combining financing, which is needed by farmers for working capital and so on over the course of their year of operation as the seasons go. Combining that with attractive pricing on inputs, with training, again, potentially with storage facilities. And that combination of services can really help farmers increase their productivity. And maybe lastly, and a good example of this kind of a business model is an enterprise in Nigeria called Babangona that several of our institutions have been part of financing, as they have been growing quite successfully over the years. The final thing I would mention is an example that we just announced this week of an investment in Kenya in solar-powered irrigation equipment with a pay-as-you-grow model for farmers. It essentially means that the equipment can be made available by such a service company to farmers that are looking to have more effective water supplies for their agricultural operations. And they don't have to pay everything up front, but essentially there's a company combining a financial service and a technology solution for the farmers, so that they essentially have credit to access water while their crop grows, and then they can pay when they have been able to bring their crop to market. And we believe these kinds of business models are very powerful, and this particular enterprise, Sun Culture in Kenya, is reaching or targeting to reach, I believe, already 10,000 farmers, and has the potential, if successful, to reach even more. So these are the kinds of models that we would like to help invest in and scale up.
Thank you, Soren. Thank you a lot for those positive information. Now I want to continue with the third part in our side event. It's energy and SME. In fact, the global energy crisis clearly concerns SMEs. They must accelerate their adaptation with a transition period that will make many of them disappear. Let's talk about initiative taken and the solution to finance them. So I'm calling Akansha from India. Please, with your company, are you fully involved in energy adaptation? In India, what SMEs are doing to modify their energy consumption, and how does your company help them with this? Please take the floor.
Hi, thank you. So in India, the companies are more and more energy efficient. They want to be more environment friendly. They're looking for the solutions. How can we help them become more energy efficient? And how can they think of solarization and decarbonization? So in WRI India, so MSMEs in India actually have, like, they offer so many jobs. They contribute to around 29% of the GDP. And they have a potential to reduce around 180 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. So in WRI, we try to work with MSMEs in 3 different levels. We try to work with them at the cluster level approach. We work with the Naroda Association. We work with Aurangabad Association. We are working with Karnal. We work with the supply chain. So we are working with the supply chain of H&M so that we reduce carbon footprint going in the backward and forward linkages. We work at the national level. We work with the ministry. We work with the DEIs. And so we are working in in a lot of states in India. We are working in H&M units. We are working with pharma. We are working with plywood. We are working with textiles and dyes. And I'll just give you one last example of how we are working there. So if you'll see, this is the satellite imagery of one of the clusters in Karnal. So this is the food cluster in Karnal. So to solarize the whole facility, what we did is, like, we took the building footprint out of it. We understood what is the potential of solarization there. And then that information was used to give the tenders, and those tenders were then used to solarize this facility, and this facility has started doing the solarization efforts. So we are helping them as a not-for-profit and as a knowledge product partner, so that how can we ensure that they grow, and they grow in the best possible way. I'll just end here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for those explanations. This all has a cost. I would like to, Effie, if you can say, how do SME could unlock private finance through the carbon market?
Yes, thank you. So we need to remove carbon on a massive scale in order to reach the climate targets. UNEP's recent emission gap report indicated that there is a huge emission gap between the current pledges that countries have made and where we need to be under 2 degrees warming. And there is a huge opportunity for SMEs and the private sector to bridge this gap by entering the voluntary carbon market, where companies are offsetting their emissions with high quality credits. Around 35% of the 2,000 largest public companies have already set a net zero target, and there is a 127% increase of net zero commitments from November last year to November this year. The volume of the voluntary carbon market in terms of value has quadrupled, so it reached 2 billion last year, and it is set to increase 30-fold or 20-fold by 2030, reaching 50 billion. So when companies' net zero climate pledges start to materialize, we will need a lot more high quality carbon removal, because this is the only carbon removal is the only way how companies can neutralize the remaining emissions which they cannot reduce right now. And carbon removal includes projects such as planting trees, restoring land, agroforestry, and at the moment it is less than 5% of the current carbon market. So we need a lot of carbon removal in the future when companies start reaching their net zero targets. And generally, carbon removal projects can be implemented everywhere around the world, but they're focused in the global south, where SMEs can tap into this market. They can start these projects, which are so important, and there are so many benefits beyond carbon. So we have benefit sharing with communities, then we have better soil quality and empowerment of local people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, now we must follow our storyboard, but of course we must economize about the time. For each speaker, if we can speak roughly around 3 minutes, no more. Now with this question concerning women and youth, we want to know in Nigeria, Freeman, how is climate change affecting young people, gender and local community? In Africa, in Nigeria, and what are you doing and what stage are you?
All right. Thank you very much. Now, initially, I spoke about how climate change is actually exacerbating the issues of poverty and hunger. But at this time, we're looking at it from another perspective, SMEs. Now, if local people, if you know them, for example, they depend either on farmland or maybe other fishery. The other thing that we are trying to advance here is SMEs, small businesses which they are involved in. The thing is, do they have capacity, financial capacity, to go about their business? For example, you have issues of flooding, or for example, the food crops they harvest. One, they don't have storage facilities. So if you are going to, we are talking about blended financing and also maybe supporting local people, we should be looking at, for example, storage facilities for them in processing their food. Also, we should look at energy supply. So for young people, they are not accessible because maybe they were not born at that time where land was more easier to acquire, and also at the moment they don't have the financial capacity to acquire land, so they don't have good access to land. So that is one issue. So at the community level, the weight of climate change is on the high side. So what we are doing at this time is to see how we can have a proper table of negotiation between young people and women, you know, who are at the center of the suffering, maybe firewood or something, maybe they don't have proper energy, how they can negotiate with government so that we can start giving them alternative livelihood. When they sit to the government, they talk, they can also develop solutions. So this is where we are developing solutions locally through cooking stove and also negotiation and also discussing actions they can take by themselves and for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Freeman. Very well. Jen, you are from Kenya. Tell why are land rights and land governance paramount for the youth, and how does this contribute to climate change, adaptation, and resilience for the youth? Please take the floor, Jen.
Yeah, thank you so much. And like all discussion are revolving around, it remains that land is the center of all. And just want to say that connecting from SMEs, connecting from agricultural engagement, we want to understand that land is a building block for social, economic, and environmental sustainability. And as International Land Coalition, we are trying to position the issues of land rights, the issues of land governance at the center of climate crisis that we are experiencing right now. We are talking about loss and damage, but of course, reversing all that the impacts, we might be able to centralize the issues of land governance and land rights, not only to the youth, but also to the women and to the marginalized communities. When I talk about marginalized communities, I'm also talking about the indigenous communities, hunters and gatherers, and as well as the pastoral communities. Non-recognition of land rights or territorial rights for the youth, of course, make them more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, and of course it excludes them from the adaptations or mitigation measures that they could uphold. And therefore, what we are trying to say that women and young girls and the youth, they are mainly adversely impacted by these issues. And why land rights is important? Land rights and territorial rights are important because when the issues of land rights are being guaranteed to the youth and to the community, there is a lower rate of deforestation, there is low greenhouse gas emissions, there is better biodiversity protection, environmental conservation, and as well as if all those things are guaranteed, that means the livelihoods of the youth and the community itself is also guaranteed. I just want to say that when the security of land tenure is enhanced, we are able to engage into long-term commitments and establishing long-lasting solutions to climate change and adaptation, such as engaging into nature-based solution, ecosystem-based solution, and of course, regenerative agriculture that of course we are bringing aspects of agroecological cultivation as a way of reducing as well as emissions. So, and all I want to say that as I conclude is that when we're talking about SMEs, when we're talking about land governance, youth should be the center of all. We cannot talk about the youth when the youth are not there. And of course, ensuring that there's participatory engagement. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Just a complementary word from Innocent. Youth land access, is it a major key of climate change and adaptation in Africa? Please take the floor, Innocent.
Yes, thank you so much.
2 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you so much. As I'm talking everywhere, we need to take an action. We need to put everything in action. Because we are youth, we are majority in half of the population in Africa. So we need to work very hard. I think Jane highlighted the very important point. So I want to share the experience that we have in Youth Initiative for Land in Africa. So to tackle the climate crisis, we are developing some tools. The first one is 10 Me My Land, who is a project that we try to sign the MOU with the municipality, collect the land, planting the trees, and also help the young people in the small SME to develop or produce the food. That is the first one. The second one is Yila Training Center. So we see that if we don't train very well the young people and build their capacity, it will be bad. So we developed this center to train the young people, to build the capacity in the land issues and land governance, and then create the space to let them collect easily the land and secure the land. Why we need to secure the land to know? Because when the young people get the money to invest in the climate action, it's really important. They will invest in the land, the climate action. And when the land is not secure, so these investments will be lost. So it's really important to secure the land. And the last one is the project that we are developing right now. So it's a e-land collect. So it's an app, mobile app, who will help the young people to collect the land. So we collect the land, and then when we mapping, we will know this region we have 10 hectares, this region we have 100 hectares. So that is what we are doing to help the young people to get the land and work in the climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Innocent. It's very clear. And now I want to call Mr. Soren, because we want to say something about technology. Not Soren, it's Lauren, sorry. About technology concerning land and forest. And he wants to speak about tree planting drone technology that provide a corrective solution to preserve the environment. That's right? You have 2 minutes, please.
Okay, I need 3. Okay, so first of all, as a Western technologist, I have to say that quite often and the developing emerging markets are rightly critical of Western solutions that are not inclusive and don't have fair revenue sharing throughout the value chain. So I invented tree planting drone technology from zero to a global industry. This is really changing how we can automate and increase the rate of restoration. And yet, we've failed because we've created a solution that is really centralized and it sends most of the profits to the Western world. It doesn't include local communities, it doesn't train them, and it doesn't have fair revenue sharing. So with Flying Forest, which is our new system, where we have the drone, we use detailed mapping, we create seed balls, you put that into the drone, it flies it along, and then it distributes those seed balls. But with the innovation, now the question is that 80% of private forested landholders in the world can't access this technology the way it was designed. With Flying Forests, because we have co-local ownership, we find and train local drone operators. We train local communities for seed collection and seed ball manufacturing. And with a 50% revenue sharing at that local level, including to the local communities to ensure that they're growing trees, not just planting trees. With this power of local, our cost is about 10% of the previous solution. And that is how you create solutions for the other 80%.
Okay.
And thank you.
Thank you so much. And just a few words from Mr. Manish. Concerning innovation for SMEs in India. We have just 2 minutes. Please, take the floor. I know that you can do that very quickly.
Hi. Well, if we talk about it, I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, and which has been kind of the whole method how the startup industries or the SMEs have been taking it in India. So whether to talk about I mean, personally, what we looked into the decentralization of energy as such and making it available for each and SME. So the innovation was not just about the generation or the storages, are also on the financing model of it. I mean, how the ownership could be built out, which could be taken forward. Apart from it, I'll also talk about a couple of other innovations, whether it was water, they came up with innovative methods to increase the ground level of water. And then there was a sustainable fashion, what we talk about. So these people, they are like one company has been working with 1,000-odd weavers to weave denim which absorbs carbon. That absorbs 2 kg of carbon during its production. And the kind of, so if you look at it, there are 1,000 people working on a daily basis and they're reducing 6,000 kgs of CO2 every day. So a lot of things is happening around it, and there's a lot to talk about, but that's right now for me.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to, to establish the contact with Soren and to make a final point concerning those financial questions. Do you think, Soren, that your financial institutions are ready to invest more and more money with SME? Because it is the very important question for the following years. Please, Soren, can you take the floor? 2 minutes. And with 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Michel. And I believe the answer is yes, for sure. But we also have to admit that it is not just about what our institutions can do, but about what the financial systems in the countries that are coming under pressure from climate change are able to do in building up their own financial systems, financial institutions. And we are hearing in very important terms from the colleagues here in the panel that there's going to be an openness to engage in financing enterprises that are facing not only significant risks, you could say, from a banking perspective, but that are facing increasing risks. And at the same time, we're going to have to be willing to finance innovative business models, innovative technologies that don't have a very long track record in the market. And in order to do that, we need to have an added risk appetite. We also need to recognize our biases as financial institutions. There's a tremendous untapped potential in unleashing the entrepreneurship of SMEs, but specifically also SMEs that are led and driven by women, led and driven by youth. And we have probably, as financial institutions, been somewhat unaware or biased against these types of enterprises. And only if we are willing to put our financing into innovative enterprises, inclusive enterprises, can we set the right example also for future entrepreneurs, for policymakers, to do the right thing at a faster pace. And I think that's exactly what we have to do to respond in a sufficient way. I believe the European DFIs have been charged and challenged to do that, and I hope we can help move along the system to respond in this way.
Okay, Soren, now we must finalize this side event. A word of conclusion. First, our various speakers have shown that the problem exists in industry, craft activities, agriculture, but that many initiatives and solutions are in action. That's the first point. The second point, I would say that SMEs is the best place not to degrade the earth. And it is the difficult time that we are thinking about how SME, they can reach this target. And SME, in fact, they are going through the one can show flexibility and reactivity. So I think that we must insist about that. And the third point, it's that in fact SMEs, they have a size and they can operate to be able of missing such a challenge. Nothing is wrong. Everything is possible, and we can say that everything has not been done. The profound change that we are going to experience means that more than ever, WUSME must play a leading role in the work to support SMEs in going through the trials and successfully adapting to the changes in our world. WUSME, for more than 10 years, has been acting in this direction and will spare no effort to contribute more in the following years. We want, of course, make our planet great again, and with all you have said and all the testimony, we think that we are in the good direction. Thank you, all of us. Thank you to the public. Thank you so much. It's okay? Huh? Okay. So, maybe we can ask to the room if we have some question. Yeah, there is a question over there.
Hi. Thank you so much. I think this topic, I think it's new for other regions. My question is, which is the effective implementation approach or mechanism for the engagement of private sector? Is the direct fund for private sector or in-kind assessment through support production line or infrastructure, or such awareness campaign for them to support them? Which is the effective implementation approach for engagement of private sector? Thank you.
I would like to ask to Soren if he can hear the question and if you can make a little answer to that. It's concerning financing to the private sector.
So the important thing, as I understand it here, is of course how do private sector enterprises and maybe also young and emerging private sector enterprises connect with financial institutions in an effective and meaningful way. Very often for emerging enterprises, this will have to be through local financial intermediaries that are supported by development finance institutions or by the market more generally. And we do see such intermediaries present in many places, but these institutions need to be oriented, of course, towards taking the kinds of risks that are involved in SMEs, and particularly the kinds of innovative business models and solutions that we have talked about today. So I do believe that local financial intermediaries are very much key, and to have local financial intermediaries that are responsive to the enterprises that are emerging in the markets.
Okay, thank you, Soren. Another question in the room.
Thank you very much. The drone is an innovative approach to climate smart solution. I would like to know, we've been using drone for monitoring, land use planning, and so many things, but this one is innovative. So how sustainable is this one? How can a low-income country, probably that has been subsidized, can really get a hold of this particular drone to improve tree planting? Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the great question. The entire point of this distributed decentralized business model, in which we bring the technology, we work with those local stakeholders, we train them, we prepare them, we give them access, we give them the knowledge, but we rely on them to implement it. And because they are included as part of that solution, they have a direct financial benefit. And it is staged for them to be able to use that technology to do all of those other pieces that are super critical to long-term ecological redevelopment, as well as local income and revenue generation. So you are a part of the solution, and it's the only way that it can be done successfully.
Well, thank you. Sherin can answer? Okay, Sherin, please take the floor.
Thank you. Very quickly, I just wanted to respond to the first question, because I think it is an important one to ask. I think that the engaging private sector is very much context specific. So it really depends on which part of the world you're looking at. A kind of an all one size fits all approach wouldn't really work especially if you're looking at the MENA region or parts of Africa that are conflict affected, for example. How do you engage the private sector effectively in those contexts requires a multi-mode approach. And so I think my response to that question would be the first and the most urgent thing to do is really to address some of the data gaps that we have about the different parts of Africa and the Middle East. If you're looking at those regions, different parts of the world, the context that you're engaging in. the regulatory environments within which the private sector acts and is operating, because I think the regulatory environment is really important. Much of the discussion has been about, bottom-up approach or what finance institutions can do. But I think if we're looking at scale change, it has to come from top down, along with from the ground up. And then the other thing is also to recognize some of the political economy realities of those regions, which can be very complex in terms of the intermediaries that you're using. So some of the evidence we generated about contexts like Yemen, Somalia, and others really point to the fact that a political economy approach is necessary in financing or engaging with the private sector effectively. And so I just wanted to put forward those ideas for much more food for thought around that engagement. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Last question? Yeah.
Thank you so much. My name is Usman Muhammad. I'm from Center for Renewable Energy and Action on Climate Change. And I'm also a margin leader at the Co-Dialogue for Land and Security. My question is, this entrepreneurship you're all talking about, to what extent that entrepreneurs turn to social entrepreneurship? And is it possible to avoid greenwashing, especially among the small entrepreneurs? And how does that work, like due to changing government policies that we frequently have? Does that affect largely the benchmark or the operational manual of these small entrepreneurs? Thank you.
Mr. Pinaki, can you take the floor?
Thank you for asking that question. In fact, in India, our entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs, and also the entrepreneurs who are into this kind of decarbonization sector, whether it is build infrastructure, whether it is farming, agro-tech, they also face a similar challenge. But what we have done at a country level and the state level is to prepare the banking and financial institutions to give away some grants and soft loans to entrepreneurs for kind of enabling them to start the business. And that's important, because as a young entrepreneur and as kind of people who want to take their interest on climate-related issues and climate technologies, funding is also very scarce. So one of the things which we from the Industrial Association do is basically to build a bridge between the government and the entrepreneur for their needs and assessment. So that is very important. So you have to create a market of demand and supply. You have to get to the government and the banking institutions and the investors that this is what we are doing, this is what we want to do in terms of like climate change technologies or intervention, and how these interventions are connected to the NDCs or the climate change goal. So that communication has to be there from the entrepreneurs and the entrepreneur community.
Thank you, Mr. Pinaki. A final word from Soren in Brussels. Just 1 minute. Please take the floor.
Yes, no, thank you very much. I do think this is a very crucial issue about when financing enterprises that claim to have an impact, whether climate related or otherwise. As investors, we have to be very careful that we are ascertaining and managing the impact that is claimed, both at the level of the whole portfolio, but also in the individual enterprise in a credible way. That's something that we as impact investors have very rigid procedures to do, but it often puts a lot of demand on small emerging enterprises to present the kinds of data points that are needed to have a credible credible claims of impact, and that is clearly a challenge for enterprises that aim both to have a financial benefit and a social or environmental benefit at the same time. So I do agree very much with the approach of being able to provide support to enterprises that that are emerging and have these impacts, and sometimes we need to look for some room to provide either subsidized advice or beneficial terms in the early stages of emergence of enterprises that have these kinds of impacts or have the potential to have them, to enable them to present in a credible way.
Soren, thank you so much. Now time is over, so I would like to thanks to everybody, and also we hope that we can see you soon in our network. It's WUSME.org. Thank you so much.